pick up in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16. We started off with Jesus teaching the Sermon on the Mount, and the first thing he taught was what we call the Beatitudes. And we went through those in the last couple weeks. Today we pick up where Jesus then said, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." When I first read the Sermon on the Mount, and the next verse is about fulfilling the law, and then using specific example about murder and adultery and divorce and taking oaths and all those different things, I always wondered, what does Jesus mean by "you are the salt of the earth and you are the light of the world"? And I stop and think about all the different things that salt does, for example, or light does. And what did they understand about salt? And we might not think that they understood much about salt. And so let's start there. Salt was very important during the time of Jesus. Rome ruled the world at that time, and basically each and every soldier in the Roman army received salt as a part of their pay. And that's where we get the word salary from, the word salt. They got a portion of salt. And part of the reason is the Romans recognized how important salt was, and so did the Jews. The Dead Sea was a very salty lake, and so they understood what salt was all about. And the immediate thing is Jesus talks about the first, salt and its taste. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt lose its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is good for nothing. It's no longer of any use. And the reality is, salt was so important to for them to eat food. We think about the Jews, for example. They had the law about don't eat blood, and so they would kill an animal and drain out. But we have the word kosher salt, and the reason we have that word is they would take the animal and use the salt to draw out the blood and to kosherize the food. And they did not understand all the different things about microbiology and such. But you and I today with modern science know, for example, that salt is used to preserve meat, and especially during a day with no refrigeration. If they killed an animal, in order for them, they would have to eat it right away, or it would go bad within a few days. And so they would kill the animal and preserve it with salt. And salt was very important to prolong and preserve meat. And they would use kosher salt to draw out the blood, and also for that they noticed that salt gave flavor to the meat. It tastes better. As a matter of fact, that's why people like to put salt on their French fries or on their food. I know some people that the moment they sit down to eat, they immediately reach and grab that salt shaker and sprinkle some salt on it. And it's all about the taste. If it did not have that taste, they wouldn't do it. And so salt is a very important part of life. As a matter of fact, it is so important that if you lost the salt in your body, you would literally die. And I know this because we once had an inmate who decided to drink a lot of water. And that's all he did, was drink a lot of water. And basically all that water flushed out all the minerals and salt in his body. And he ended up going to Mayo Clinic over it. Almost died. We need salt. Our body cannot function without it. As a matter of fact, the reason the Romans gave their soldiers salt as part of their salary, where we got salary, as part of the payment for service, was they realized as their soldiers are out there working and doing all the work that they had to do, practicing and fighting, etc., they would get sweaty. And I don't know if you ever noticed that, if you ever tasted the sweat on your body, it tastes salty. And the reason is your body is pushing out all those minerals to keep it going. And if you ever was an athlete, and you, especially a runner, and you ran, they would give you a salt tablet to take and with water to replenish those minerals. Famous story about the Florida Gators. They developed Gatorade. And basically Gatorade is a drink that a lot of us drink today that replenishes that salt and vitamins and minerals and stuff that we need. And the Florida Gators invented Gatorade by them drinking that, and the body was, returned to do more. And so salt is a very important thing, but mainly it was used to preserve food and for taste. But we now know that we use more salt, especially here in Minnesota, for other things besides preserving food and taste. We know, for example, the reason that salt preserves food is that it actually kills the bacteria. There's no room for the bacteria to grow, so it kills. And I don't know if you've ever noticed that how salt does this. I remember once got a little cut, and if you ever get salt in it, what happened? It burns. I mean, and that's what it's doing. It's literally killing those bacteria. And so salt preserved by killing, which is a new concept, isn't it? It kills bacteria, but in order to preserve the meat, in order to give it taste, and that's what Jesus is saying. You're the salt of the earth, and you need to preserve life. But part of that is sometimes killing off the bad stuff, the bacteria, in order to preserve, to give taste to life. But reality here in Minnesota, we use more salt for putting it on the roads during the winter. Whenever it snows and ice and stuff, the truck go along and it scrapes it off, and it spreads salt, and what it does is it actually lower the freezing point of water, or we use it, or as another way of saying that, it melts the ice, and we know that's what it does. It's lowering it, that freezing point, and we can see this, for example, whenever we make something called ice cream. I don't know how many of y'all ever put salt in and churn away for hours. Today we have electric motors. We just put it in and let it go. But you would put that rock salt around because it does that. And so the salt is so useful. Without it, like I said, our life would not, we could not live. And Jesus is saying, if you lose this ability, what good are you except to be thrown away? And as Christians, Jesus is saying, you are the salt of the earth. You need to do these many functions. Preserve, withdraw the blood, give taste. Again, it's necessary for life, and it was so necessary that the Roman soldier received it as a part of their pay, knowing that they would have to take so much salt each day in their food, to rehydrate themselves. And we might not understand this, but we all know this. For example, we drink fresh water, but the biggest part of the earth is salt water in the seas and ocean. And things that those minerals, that salt and all these other minerals, whenever they don't have a place to flow to, they accumulate. And so, the reason we have salt deposits today is old seas and ocean that have evaporated and left behind these minerals. It's an important part of life. Without it, we would not exist. And Jesus is saying, if you're not contributing and important, and you lose your saltiness, then what good are you? And so as Christians, we need to remain like salt, preserving food, by killing off the bacteria, the bad stuff, by you know, being where we lower that freezing point to make stuff like ice cream or to melt ice, etc., to give taste to the food. Without it, life would be boring and bland. Jesus continues with the second metaphor. You are the light of the world. And then he goes on and said, a tongue built on a hill cannot be hidden. And neither do a person light a lamp and put it under a bushel. Instead, they light the lamp and put it on a lampstand in the room so it can spread the light. And Jesus was, for example, said, I am the light of the world. Now he's saying, you are the light of the world. The whole purpose of light was to allow people to see in the middle of darkness. What it does is light dispels darkness. And Jesus is saying, you put it on a stand so that it gives light to everyone in the house. You put it on a lamppost. And, you know, I don't know about you, but light is so important. As a matter of fact, if the earth was not so far from the sun in what they call the Goldilocks area, that light traveling to where we are, if we were too close to the sun, we'd burn. If we were too far from the sun, we would freeze. Light is so important. And the sun is the biggest example of light as Jesus understood it, which was a fire. The sun is a big ball of fire. A lot more massive than Earth, millions of times bigger and massive. But it gives off this heat. And so you're the light of the world. And they understood a lot with their oil lamps that without the light you could not see. And so Jesus is saying, you're supposed to let people see. You know, there are so many uses for that. With fire, for example, it not only gives light, but it gives heat and warmth. I know in Minnesota, again, you know, not only do we use salt in the winter, but I definitely use heat. Nothing like a good wood-burning stove or fireplace, you know, to give off that heat. Today we use natural gas, we use, you know, furnace, etc. But the reality is fire gives off heat. It is used for cooking. There are so many uses for that light that, you know, we might forget. That, and what Jesus is saying, that we are to be useful in all of it. Salt and light are useful things. And far too often we forget that as Christians, we're not supposed to be idle spectators, but we are supposed to be active, useful people. And that's what Jesus is saying. If you lose that saltiness, you're thrown out. And you should put your light on a lampstand so that people can see it. And he goes on, said, in the same way, let your light what? Shine. Let your light shine. Don't hide it. As Christians, we're supposed to be busy shining so that others can see the gospel message, the truth. Today we can do it like we're doing it right now. I'm doing it over, you know, Facebook. Convert it to YouTube. Over and over again. We should not be ashamed of being Christian. We should let our light shine. The blessing is let the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine on you. The reality is we're supposed to shine, not so for our own glory, but Jesus go on, that they may see your good deeds. And it comes down to this. Jesus is saying you are salt and you are light when you do good things. And that brings, you know, all these different metaphors together. When we put all our good works, good deeds, and other people see it, and they ask you, why do you do these things? And we answer, we do it because we are Christian. For example, we feed the hungry, not because we are, you know, we are Christians. That's why we are called upon to do all these different things, to be salt and light, to do good things. But if we don't do good things, if we lose our saltiness, we lose our light, then what good are us? Jesus said, put yourself out there, be that light. Put yourself on the lamp thing. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. It can be seen from all around. And as Christians, we should not hide our Christianity. We should be seen as Christians. Let your light shine. Do the good deeds. Therefore, then when they ask, your Father will be glorified in heaven. We do it. The reason we do things is not for our self-aggrandization or for self, but for God. As Christians, our mission is to further the kingdom of God. And so that's what Jesus is talking about. Be light, be salt, do the things. Don't lose it. Too often we forget that that's what we're called upon to do. As Christians, again, salt is so valuable for life. It does so many things. Same thing with light. It's so valuable. As a matter of fact, we have learned that light is the fastest traveling thing in the universe. We say the speed of light. It takes about 8.5 minutes for the light to travel from the sun to the earth. It's fast. I don't know about you, but we use light today, not like they did. Today when we we turn on the light for us to be able to see it, so we just flick a switch. Back then it was fire. But it is still the same use for us to be able to see. And Jesus is saying, let people see, so that rather than being in darkness, John used that as the metaphor with Jesus, that we were living in darkness and the people had seen a great light, and that light is Jesus. And we are to be like Jesus and let our light shine. We'll pick up there next week. And we'll continue with the Sermon on the Mount.